What is the real reason for Tesla's success? The answer will surprise you. So, regardless of whether you like them or not, Tesla is the most successful car maker of the 21st century. And there are a lot of explanations, right? The cult of personality surrounding Elon Musk, the push by governments to drive cleaner vehicles, the cleaner world in general. But the thing is, one thing that is not talked about when you look at Tesla is how the fundamentals of their success were based on very, very simple things, very, very basic marketing principles that you can literally learn on your first day of learning marketing. So, today we're going to break down the overlooked part of Tesla's success, the very simple principles that honestly could have been applied by anyone, but they were applied expertly by Tesla, and that is what led to their success. Hi everyone, welcome back to the Ministry of Car. I'm Utkarsh coming to you from Singapore. Quick background for those of you who don't know me, I have a background in marketing, leading marketing for some of the world's top brands, so there's that. And of course, I'm a Petrolhead, and apparently I like guitars. Alright, let's get into this. And if you've seen my videos on Jaguar and BMW, some of this will be familiar. So, with any good marketing problem, you need to understand the problem that you're dealing with. So, some of the concepts that we'll deal with here as we talk about Tesla's success is insights, understanding the human, understanding the consumer, barriers, why humans do what they do, what is stopping them from doing what they want, and strategies and ways of executing these against to make people think what you want them to think. Okay, very simple concepts, hopefully not too confusing. Here's the underlying insight. Cars are very unique in our mindset, in the minds of people who buy them and the people who drive them. Because they have two things. They're not just a tool, they are a tool because you have to drive somewhere, you need to get from A to B. So they're very definitely a tool. But they're also a prized possession, which means it's a thing of value. It's something, a possession that you take pride in. And it's an anthropomorphized prized possession. You associate yourself with your car in a way that you won't associate yourself, say, even if you buy a huge flat TV or whatever is the latest things in TVs. You're not going to think of you yourselves in terms of your computer, but the car kind of reflects your own personality, not in a way a refrigerator, a computer, even a smartphone does not. So that's what makes cars very unique. And this is the starting point, because this is the starting point for the reason that electric cars never took off. I've been following the automotive industry closely through car magazines, mainly in the beginning, for at least 15 years before Tesla entered the public imagination. And as it turns out, it's not that people were not talking about electric cars or alternate sources of fuel. People were taking stabs at it. Some of you may remember the ill-fated G-Wiz, which ran around in Britain, and it was called the Reva in India. I almost did an internship there, but that's a different story. Right? So you may remember early stabs at electric cars before they became popular with Tesla. And the problem was electric cars were fundamentally not doing their job. So in marketing, there's a concept of job to be done. When people are buying a product or using a service, they are doing it so that because they need a job done. You go to a barber because the job needs to be done is to cut your hair. You buy a phone because the job to be done is you need to stay connected, use your apps or whatever it might be. There's a job to be done. It's a tool. And for cars, there were two jobs to be done that cars were not doing. So let's get into these, where electric cars were failing. The first one was, the job to be done is cars need to get me where I want to go, when I want to go there. That's the fundamental basic of transport, right? Of personal transport. I want to get here anytime, anywhere I want to get to, anytime I want to get to. And electric cars were simply not able to do that. There were concerns on range, there were concerns on infrastructure. So either you have an anxiety on whether you'll be able to get where you want to get to, or whether you'll be able to get back based on what charging infrastructure you have. Electric cars were failing miserably, right? They had very, very limited use cases. One could argue that even today the problem hasn't been fully solved, but we'll keep that aside. But this was the big problem. A car was simply not able to do its job, electric car rather, was not able to do the job that a normal car could, which is get me where I want to go, when I want to get there. That was problem number one. Problem number two was what? Problem number two was going back to the insight that it's not just a tool, it is a prized possession, an anthropomorphized prized possession. Problem number two was I don't want to own an electric car because it is dull and boring. Simple as that. I mean, all the electric cars were really slow. They look really funny. I'm going to pick on the G-Wiz, Reva once again. Even early stabs at alternate technology, say the Prius, which did get adopted. No Petrolhead worth the salt had any interest in the Prius. Top Gear made fun of them, if you may remember. Right? So, when it comes to cars, what you don't realize is that much like any industry, the taste of what or the definition of what is cool is defined by the people who are enthusiastic about that product, the petrol heads in this particular case. And for petrol heads, what was cool were whether you could call them the Ferraris, Lamborghinis, or whatever, other fast cars, so to speak. We'll get into this fast aspect in a second. Right? Those cars were cool. They looked good, they were fun to drive, they were fast to drive. Electric cars were worse than functional. They were just, it was just boring. Simple as that. So these are the true barriers that we were contending with, and no one had solved them. Nobody had solved them. Nobody had made an electric car that was exciting. Nobody had made an electric car that could do the job that a petrol or a diesel car could. And that is where Tesla just did two very, very simple things. Now, let's talk about the interesting part first, which is electric cars are boring, petrol cars are interesting. As long as I remember, we always knew this theoretical concept that electric motor has instant torque, which means that, now I'm not going to get into explaining power and torque here, but whatever push that you get from the car, it comes immediately with electric car. Think of when you switch on anything electricity, it's instant. Whereas in a petrol or diesel car, there is a question of getting the motor to spin fast enough. Again, I'm getting into explaining how cars work, but there is a lag till you can get maximum push. Let's just say that. Electric cars, instant push. Normal car, ICE cars, internal combustion engine cars, delayed push. It was a theoretical concept. But what Tesla did is that it turned this natural advantage of electric cars into something that could excite the tastemakers, the car enthusiasts. Because when you have instant push, you get very, very fast acceleration. Particularly if you have sufficiently large motor. And suddenly, what you realize is that Teslas were giving acceleration numbers that just made petrol or diesel cars pale in comparison. Not just that, there was something that and this is where you may think that the founder Elon Musk is just messing around with the ludicrous mode and race mode and all of that. But it's not messing around, because what happens is when you put something so exciting in a car that, wow, people are actually making videos. There's a whole video trend 10 years ago of people just switching on the ludicrous mode in the Tesla and accelerating super fast and shocking their passengers. This may look like just fooling about, but really, it was a very deliberate effort to induce excitement into the product. Because we humans are excited by acceleration. Drag races, 0 to 100 times or 0 to 60 times if you're talking in miles, have been the cornerstone of defining how interesting a car is. Right? All the advancements, the most exciting cars, they came because suddenly this could accelerate 0 to 100 in 5 seconds, 4 seconds, 3 seconds, 2 seconds. And top speed. Top speed would not be the best thing for electric cars, but 0 to 100 definitely was. So all of these antics that we thought were just antics were really a way to inject excitement into electric cars like never before. So suddenly a Tesla became something that even like someone like me who's a petrol head would be like, wow, that car does 0 to 100 in like 4 seconds. It's faster in accelerating than a Ferrari, and it's a great bragging point, right? Imagine an early adopter electric car owner versus driving a glorified trolley. You can tell somebody, hey, my electric car, it activates it activates faster than a Ferrari 430 or whatever it was at that time. That is a talking point. That is making it an object of desire. That is making it the kind of anthropomorphized possession that you want to own. So as silly as it may sound, as ludicrous as it may sound, it wasn't. This was a very deliberate part of the strategy. And that is a big reason why Tesla suddenly became exciting. They became items of possession. Right? So going back to trial barrier, electric cars are boring and dull too. Electric cars are interesting. They can shock petrol cars in terms of acceleration. They can be ludicrous. They are exciting. I want to own them. But ultimately, even if it's exciting, the car still needs to do its job. And that was still the challenge for electric cars, because there's a limited range of a battery and filling spots are few and far between. This is where you get to. This is where you get to a principle that we call test and expand or win and expand. Now, what am I talking about over here? Clearly, if you have an infrastructure problem, you can't. If you're if you're trying to set up infrastructure, you can't do it all over the world or all over the country at one time. And for normal car makers, they already have a well-established infrastructure from the government itself, all the petrol pumps, diesel pumps all over the country. That it would make no sense for them that if they want to launch electric car, that they would invest in infrastructure for it as well. Because for a normal car maker, the first dollar spent would be to maximize profit. And investing in expensive infrastructure would make no sense for it. But for Tesla, they don't have a petrol business, they don't have a diesel business, so their dollars went to let's win or test in a small part, in a small portion, and show the use case of our products within that small area and then expand. So what did they do? They invested in the supercharger network, not all over the place. In the beginning, they were very, very concentrated in very, very particular affluent areas, like in California. But within that area, if you owned a Tesla, not only did you have access to charging points all over, but they were free. So suddenly, where previously the electric car had disadvantage where I don't know if I can get to where I want to whenever I want. Here you can get to where you want to whenever you want because you can charge on these superchargers which are everywhere in your area. And not only that, it is free. So they built on that barrier and they turned it into a further advantage because you normally be paying whatever hundreds of dollars in petrol. Suddenly, it will do the job for you because you have infrastructure everywhere and it's free. So it's a further advantage over a petrol car, which could be the tipping point for you to make a decision. So that's what happens there. And then once you win in a small area, then you expand. Then you go expand to the next county or you expand to the next state or whatever it takes. And over a period of time, that supercharger network built up. Right? So again, very, very simple in theory because you are solving the barrier of electric cars don't get me where I want to, when I want. But it required something that a normal car maker could not do because simply how management decisions work is that there would be no way a BMW or a General Motors or anybody would prioritize building an electric charger network when their bread and butter and core product is petrol and diesel cars. It would never make sense. I cannot imagine any proposal that would make its way through any sort of management committee. Now, of course, is a different case, but especially back then. So that was it. That's what Tesla did, actually. It just solved two trial barriers. Make electric cars exciting, make electric cars able to do their job, which is to get people to wherever they want, whenever they want, and build it up on top through, of course, all the accoutrement that later followed with the cult of personality, and of course the advantage for at least for initial owners of it being practically free to run, which petrol and diesel cars weren't. The only last thing I want to add about this is it's not a deliberate part of Tesla's strategy, though it of course ended up being a part of it, is the halo effect. Because what you may realize is that it's very easy for brands to go down market, but it's very difficult for them to go up market. So for example, for Honda and for Toyota, they could not compete against Mercedes-Benz and BMW under the Honda and Toyota name. They had to launch Acura and Lexus. But on the flip side, when BMW or Mercedes decided they wanted to go down market, they could easily go below the C class to launch a class or go below the 3 series to launch a 1 series or a 2 series. It's easier to go down. So Tesla started with something relatively upmarket, the Model S, the first one, I think it's S, yes. And then of course the Model 3 came, and then there was this whole excitement. A car, a Tesla, which is now this thing of desire, which does its job better than a petrol car, at least if you live in a certain area. These cost $100,000, suddenly you can get them at $30,000. That adds another layer of excitement. It's a good use of the marketing principle of halo, where you use a more expensive product to inject excitement on a cheaper product, to inject positive brand equity. So there you go. This is the marketing 101 explanation of why Tesla was successful. Hopefully it's given you some more information than the typical fixations on Elon Musk or policy. Those are important as well, but hopefully this gives you a more fundamental view. Let me know if this was helpful and whether you'd like me to make more videos on this, leveraging my background in business, in management, and in marketing, and of course, my deep-seated passion for cars. All right, I'll see you next time.